a house in, oh yeah, now I've got to tell you this, haven't I? I've got to point out that we are recording, so if you want to hide, please hide, but otherwise you might be on the recording, but that'd be good to see a few faces. That's excellent. So James is going to talk about a house in Duke Avenue, which has had quite a lot of work done, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of very interesting features there. We'll then take some questions, your questions to James, and then following that, Susie Holden will be showing us some pictures and talking, I think, or in fact we have a video from Susie about her green roof. So that'll be another interesting feature. James, can I hand over to you and ask you to show us your presentation?
So yes, we wanted to let you all know all the things we did to make our house an eco house and to reduce energy costs up to 70%, really. So the reason why we did it in the first place was my wife and I were very concerned about global warming and the impact it's going to have on the climate, on Earth, and also the impact for future generations. 25% of energy used is in buildings for heating and hot water. So sustainable living at home is a very important thing for everyone. And our heating bill reduced from £2,500 to £900 per annum after all our eco retrofit measures were installed. So on a lot of boilers, the way boilers are configured is that when someone turns on a tap for hot water for a shower or in the sink, the water comes out hot straight away. And the way that the boiler does that is every few minutes it fires up to keep that water hot. The problem is that's wasting an enormous amount of gas that's not necessary. And boilers have got this mode called eco. And if you press that eco mode, the gas only comes on when someone actually turns on the shower or the hot water tap. So it takes slightly longer, but saves an enormous amount of energy. We try to keep our room temperature heating down to about 16.5 centigrade. And also we set the hot water temperature to 60 centigrade. So that's important because every 1 centigrade higher than that uses up a lot more energy than is necessary. Also, we set a timer for the hot water. So we only have the hot water on in the morning for 2 or 3 hours and in the evening for 2 or 3 hours when we all take a shower. Low flow shower and also shower heads and also low flow tap heads can substantially reduce the amount of water that comes out. And that means that you need a lot less heating. Because you're using a lot less hot water, you need a lot less heating in the first place. A very huge amount of savings can be made that way. That's our front door. Underneath the door, there's a black strip there, which is basically a draft proof, to draft proof the underneath so the cold air doesn't come in. We also draft proofed around the letterbox and also draft proofed the back door, and we draft proofed around all the windows as well. And also it's important to keep the windows closed when the heating's on. If a property doesn't have double glazing, the alternative is to put film on the inside or acrylic sheet. Chimneys allow a huge amount of cold air to come in. So we blocked off 5 of the 6 in our house. You can also use it's called a chimney balloon. I've shown a picture of it here to stop the cold air coming in. We put loft insulation in, minimum 27 centimeters of sheep's wool. So it's natural and it's breathable. If you haven't put in insulation, loft insulation, or floor insulation, another option is to have very thick rugs or carpets, because that can help reduce the cold coming through. We have PV panels on the roof, so we produce some of our electricity using clean energy, and we also have a clean energy provider. We use good energy. It's very important to have thermostatic radiator controls in all the rooms. So in any rooms that we're not using, we turn it off. And also, the radiators fill up with air, so it's important to bleed them regularly. And also, the radiators and the pipework, they sort of fill up with sludge. So when the heating's on, the heating's sort of heating up the sludge rather than sort of heating up the radiators properly. So every couple of years, we arrange a plumber to come in and remove all that sludge. So then we need much less heating to heat up the rooms. And we've insulated our hot water cylinder. It needs to be a minimum of 8 centimeters. So it sort of keeps the warm water in. Our energy appliances in the kitchen and our boiler are, we got them as energy efficient appliances we could. This is basically doing the same function as an air brick, but whereas air bricks sort of let the cold air in and the moisture out, what this does, it's got sheep's wool in the middle. So it lets the moisture out, but it stops the cold air coming into the room. In the bathrooms, in the top right-hand corner, you can see there's a, it's called a humidistat. And what that does is, it works all the time. It's just constantly drawing out any moisture or steam that's in the bathroom. So you don't get condensation on the walls. The insulation we did in our house, we did it on all the inside walls that actually face the outside of the property. We did it underneath the ground floor, so we lifted the floor up. We did it in the loft, and we did it in the eaves in the roof. The windows, we replaced the windows for double glazed windows, but we wanted to try and retain the original sort of style of the windows that we had. So those are our new windows, but they look exactly like the old windows. They're double glazed, they're argon-filled low-E glass, and we draft proofed around them. If somebody doesn't want to put in double glazed windows, another option is to secondary glaze them. So we put PV panels on our roof about 9 years ago. Today you can add battery storage. So the PV panels work when there's light, and if you have battery storage as well, it means the electricity can be stored and can be used at night. So here we've just circled in our kitchen and our dining room all the different things that we did. So the double doors to the garden were the original doors with the leaded glass, and we secondary glazed that. In the top right-hand corner, you've got a pacifier, and the lights are all low energy lights. And in the kitchen area, we did an extension at the back, and the wall has actually got sort of 2 walls with a gap in the middle. So we managed to put cavity wall insulation in there. Next steps I recommend for all of you is make an action plan, try and maximize your energy efficiency and add renewables. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. we have an opportunity to ask questions. I should have said at the beginning that we'll take questions in the chat, if we may, please. We haven't got any there at the moment, but I think what we've heard may have raised some questions in people's minds. Please put them into the chat if you'd like to, and we'll get Simon to make a response. Simon, I hope you won't mind me saying that you were telling us you were about to register as an energy assessor. I think I've got that right.
Yes.
Simon, yeah, you are hearing me. Yes, okay.
Okay.
It's James, not Simon, Brian.
I'm sorry. I forgot that. I do apologise, James. I do apologise.
Don't worry.
You're about to register as an energy assessor. So you're speaking from quite a lot of expertise about these matters. And please, now everybody, take the opportunity to ask questions of an energy assessor. Right, we've got some here now. I'll just take them from the top for the moment. Can we have details again of your last slide? Did you just put your last slide up? Oh, that was the action point, was it?
By the way, I haven't done the energy assessor course yet. I'm about to do the course, and then I'll become an energy assessor.
Yeah.
So I'm going to screenshot it.
Share your screen again. Yeah.
That's the last slide.
Right. So those are the information sources.
That's a link to the EPC for every property in England to see what the energy rating currently is, and also what recommendations the energy assessor has suggested for that property. And that's online and it's free.
Okay. We'll try and get that information into the chat so that people can copy it down if they're not able to take it straight off the screen there.
Shall I put that on the... I'll put it in the chat.
Cara?
I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, if you can, please, that would be very helpful.
Hang on,
Thank you.
I can't cut and paste it.
No.
That's okay. We can find it and put it on there.
We'll do it.
James, if you want to stop sharing your screen.
Right. Someone asked, how big is the heat pump? Do you have a heat pump?
No, we don't have a heat pump.
No. Right. Okay.
In future, that's what the government is going to encourage people to, rather than installing a gas boiler, that they want to encourage people in the future to install a heat pump, and they're going to provide financial incentives to do that from April next year.
Okay, thank you. Right, one of the homes that was available for visiting, Lucy Craig's home, has a full has a heat pump, an air source heat pump, and I think there is a video about that on the website, so you might be able to follow that one up. Someone asks, can I ask a question about the humidistat in the bathroom, please? Does this mean we can dry stuff without opening the bathroom window?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it keeps the relative humidity down quite low.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean that's that brand, that environment brand, and the best thing to do is to get them to come and install it themselves directly, the manufacturer, because if they install it themselves, firstly that means they give a 7-year guarantee rather than a 1-year guarantee, and secondly they'll guarantee that the insulation is done correctly, so that the moisture does actually flow out of the bathroom properly. How
does the efficiency of that for drying, how does that compare with using heat and an open window, I suppose? Is it a more efficient way of getting the drying effect than more traditional heating?
Well, it's a different way of doing it.
Right.
If you have an open window this time of year, the room's going to get freezing.
Yeah. So it could well be a more efficient way of achieving it, of achieving the drying. Mm-hmm. Can you say something more about insulation, please, especially the outward facing walls, or the external walls, I suppose it means.
Sure. Well,
did you have internal the internal face of the wall is insulated, I think, is not the external face.
That's right.
Yeah.
In Muswell Hill, a lot of Muswell Hill is a conservation area, and you're not allowed to put external wall insulation on the front of the house that faces the street. You can do it on the back of the house facing in the garden, but you can't do it on the front. So what we did was we hired a consultant from an organization called the Centre for Alternative Technology, which are one of the leading organizations in Europe for renewable energy. And they put a specification together for us, and they helped project manage the installation with our builder. And they came on site to make sure it was being done properly. And we put 10 centimeters of internal wall insulation on all the walls that face the front of the house and face the back of the house. And the insulation was breathable, natural breathable material.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and someone asks how that relates to protecting original features in the house. Would it be disproportionate to the features? Would it make the, I don't know, depths of windows and so on look strange?
Well, when we did that, we had to take all the ceilings. We had to take the ceilings down on the ground floor, and then we had to basically buy some similar looking items to put it back up to try and keep the original features looking the way they looked before. That's how we did that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, effectively the room becomes a little bit smaller. Yes, the rooms become a bit smaller.
Do you notice that? Did you find it noticeable?
No, not at all. No. But our rooms are quite large, so you'd only really feel it if the rooms are quite small.
Yeah. Can you say anything about costs of the sort of work you had done? Someone's particularly asking about glazing of sash window, double glazing of sash windows. But costs in general, can you give us some ideas about the relative merits of the different items, perhaps, in terms of their value?
Well, I mean, we did it 9 years ago, so I have no idea what prices are like today. But our sash double glazed windows were £1,000 each. So we have 18 windows, so we spent £18,000. That was 9 years ago. So I have no idea today what that would be. And in terms of the internal wall insulation and the underfloor floor insulation on the ground floor that we did, it's hard to talk about that really, because we just bought the house and it hadn't been decorated for about 40 years or 50 years. So we were going to redecorate the whole house anyway. We were going to replaster and repaint. So we would have incurred all those redecoration expenses anyway. So the only additional cost was to actually buy the insulation materials, which was a relatively small amount of money in comparison to the redecoration of the house. So it's hard to sort of really talk about costs. Plus, we also did it 9 years ago, so that would have changed a bit. But the main expense was actually just we were going to redecorate and repaint anyway.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody agrees that's absolutely the time to do it when you're going to do a major overhaul anyway.
Absolutely, yes. If you're going to redecorate and repaint anyway, to add internal wall insulation or underground floor insulation is relatively insignificant amount of money in proportion to, you know, major works in the property.
The difficulty is that for many people, the moment they've just bought a house and moved in is the time when they're on their last bean, and incurring additional expenses is not very welcome.
Yeah.
Is it worth perhaps extending mortgages to achieve these things, do you think, at that moment?
Well, the government have announced that they want all properties in England and Wales to have a minimum EPC of C by 2035. So everyone, whether they like it or not, or unless they can apply for an exemption, will have to do it within the next 14 years.
Right. That's useful information. Thank you. Good. I think we've gone through. No, just a minute. Maybe there are more questions here. Hang on, let's have a look. Oh, yeah. Someone asks, is all your wall insulation cavity wall insulation? I think you only said it was a new wall that was.
No, there's only one new wall in the kitchen in that picture that I showed. That slide I showed.
Yeah.
The rest are all solid. But the house is 100 years old. It's Edwardian.
Right. We'll go through these questions quickly. Is it viable to put PV panels on a north-facing or west-facing roof?
Well, to be honest, you'd really need to speak to a PV panel supplier about that. And my understanding is it always goes onto a south-facing roof. But I'm not. Whilst we have it, I'm not an expert in renewable energy like that. So you'd have to ask somebody who does it. Maybe even two companies to get a view about whether that be viable or not. I think what they might be able to do is that they can model how much electricity will actually be produced by the panels, if it's north facing or west facing or south facing, and then the owner can decide whether it makes sense to do that or not.
Can I just say something? I think with PV panels, usually it's that 180 degrees from kind of northwest to from west through to east. So west, southwest, south, southeast, east would all be worth looking at. Anything kind of north of that, northwest, north, northeast, is probably not going to be viable. That is a kind of general rule.
Right. Thank you, Cara. Makes sense.
Someone's asking, were you using Semper Tap at all as an internal wall insulation? The product called Semper Tap, which is a thin, I don't know, it's expanded polystyrene or something like that, or foam insulation.
No, there's one thing it's very important to think about. If someone's considering insulating their property, what insulation does, it puts a plastic bag around the property to keep the heat in. And that means that when someone then cooks or has a shower, all that steam and breathing as well and all the condensation and moisture is going to sit on the walls and can turn into mold. So it's very important, if you insulate your property, whichever material you decide to use, it's very important that you put some very good ventilation in all the rooms that have it. It's very, very important that you do that. Otherwise you will get more condensation and you'll get mold, which is poisonous.
Right. So
the two have to be done together, basically.
Breathable insulation.
Breathable insulation and ventilation.
Yeah.
Two things.
Somebody asked a question about, do you know the name of the brick vent you mentioned with the insulation inside it? Can you give us any more, what we Google for?
Yes. Yes. Shall I? I need to look that up.
Yeah. You can put it in the chat as we go on, if you like, James.
Okay, yes, I'll do that.
It's a later stage.
Sure.
I mean, a couple of questions about heat pumps, the fact that they're very big and perhaps difficult to use for a small flat. Someone says, if you can't have heat pumps, what is the best boiler to get sustainability wise? You still use a gas boiler, I think. Yeah,
we have a gas boiler. Yes, obviously we bought it 9 years ago. We just try to get the most energy efficient one that we can. I mean, two things there. First of all, getting the most energy efficient gas boiler is one thing that people can think about, but also the timer for the heating and the timer for the hot water is crucial, and the temperature that sets the room temperature. So there's those things, we can all control those things. Mm-hmm. And that'll substantially and then the low flow shower and tap heads. Those things can reduce your heating bills more than 50%.
Yeah. I think you said that you set your temperature to 16.5, was it?
16.5 room
Is
temperature.
is that in the room that you're living in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have
That's
it off. We have it off for about half the year as well.
Right.
All the heating.
Yeah. And do you find that you need very warm clothing and for that temperature?
Yes, we do. Yes, we walk around with sweaters on. Yes.
Yeah. Could you recommend the plumber you use for draining sludge from the central heating system?
Yes, I can. Shall I put that in the chat?
Yes, if you would, please. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
And someone else asking about finding it difficult to find contractors. Is there a federation of master insulators or something like that? Or would the Centre for Alternative Technology be able to help?
I've got 2 links I can put in the chat about that too, to find someone to do those.
Okay. And Cara's put some, put a link to the Muswell Hill Sustainability Group Red's website for installers.
Can I just make a comment on that as well? I mean, it's worth checking Trustmark as well. So they were responsible for accrediting people that were that were able to install measures through the now failed Green Homes Grant voucher, but that all of the contractors there would have had to go through the quite high levels of accreditation known as the PAS standards, so should know about insulation, ventilation, etc. Only caveat there, they will be very busy. There's a really urgent need to get people trained up. So yeah, we have got a few installers on our website. It is quite hard to find. Hopefully James has got some other good suggestions. Check Trustmark as well.
Very good. I think we've gone through all of the questions that were listed. I'm waiting for time. Could I ask one quick question myself? And that is that you mentioned both double glazing and the use of film over windows. Do you find the film is effective in providing is essentially the feature of double glazing? Does it provide effective insulation?
Well, I mean, double glazing is better. It's just not everybody will want to spend £1,000 per window putting in double glazing. So as an alternative, they could put film on, they could put film with acrylic, or they could put secondary glazing. There's 3 different options.
Yeah, but film is very thin, and yeah. You find still effective?
No, I mean, no, it's not. No, it's not as effective. But what I'm saying is, it's a much more budget option if someone doesn't want to spend £1,000 a window, because that's very expensive. People may not want to spend. A lot of people won't want to spend £1,000 a window.
Yeah, I suppose the question I'm asking, James, is it worth doing?
Well, I mean, you know, anything's better than nothing. So yes, it is worth doing.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed, James, for answering a whole plethora of questions there. We fired a whole lot of questions at you. Thank you very much for picking those up. And there may be a chance to ask James another question later on, possibly. But we'll move on at this stage, I think, to hear the video that's been prepared of Susie's work and her green roof. If Cara is able to show that to us.
Yeah, I will do. If you just
and then Susie will pick up questions, but there may be a chance to come back to James as well if you've further questions to him. Let's look at the green roof.
Okay, so just bear with me. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen okay, and I'm going to start playing the film now.
So we've lived in this house for about 10 years, and we built a small kitchen extension which had a flat roof. It was quite a sort of deep flat roof, and it had sort of dark asphalt on it. And I mean, for a start, it looked really horrible, and I wanted to do something about that. So we decided to consider having a green roof put in. And actually, it was one of the best things we've ever done, because what I hadn't realised about ordinary flat roofs are, that they deteriorate very quickly with, you know, UVA and stuff, and heavy weather can make ordinary flat roofs deteriorate. So if you have a green roof fitted, it actually extends the lifespan of your roof, but it gives you all those environmental benefits too. It wasn't complicated to arrange, and actually it's quite a sort of standard roofer put our green roof in, and it was quite reasonable. And they used the standard sort of industry specifications. And what happened was, they just turned up with soil, and they put all their layers in, and then rolls of sedum were put on the top. And that was 5 years ago, and it's just been remarkable. So what it does is it keeps us warm in the winter, and it keeps us cooler in the summer. And when there's massive rainfall, which does happen from time to time, increasingly with climate breakdown, it does absorb all the water. So it actually, we've done it for a whole raft of reasons, and obviously it benefits biodiversity, because the green roof is flowers in the summer, and you can see all the insects having a lovely time. But I don't know, it keeps us really cozy, and it's a really nice thing to look out on. And the other thing I really want to be at pains to say is it's completely zero maintenance. So when you first have the green roof fitted, you have to water it diligently for 2 weeks, and then you can pretty much forget about it. And it's survived periods of enormous drought. It goes a bit sort of brown and tatty looking, but then as soon as you get some rainfall, it perks up again. So I actually think the green roof is one of the best things I've done. And the other thing is, I know this is a small point, but it has a lot of aesthetic value. So when I'm standing in my son's bedroom, which looks out over onto the green roof, before it was just a sort of horrible pit of black asphalt and looked horrible. Now it's green and it's restful, and it soaks up all the water, and a really good thing to have if your roof is, you know, if your roof can handle it.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the video. Yeah, so Susie has unmuted herself, and there we are. Yeah, good. So do we have questions to Susie? Well, maybe Susie, you could tell us a little bit more about the construction of the roof. How much soil, how thick is it all?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't really tell you any of that, because I just sort of watched from afar. Standard roof, and the whole thing came about because we had our kitchen extension built, and our building contractor had one or two really bad subcontractors working for him, and the roof was completely and utterly rubbish. So we had to get the whole thing redone. And this time we found a really good roofer, and they used this sort of standard German system for flat roofs, which is extremely excellent. No idea, it's called Kemperol. That didn't interest me in the least. What did interest me was finding a way to extend the life of a roof. It's a really boring thing to have to worry about a flat roof in your life. So much better to put a green roof in, and then just enjoy it. And now that was actually 2015. We put the roof in 2015, which is now 6 years ago, and it's still looking just the way it did. It is a wonderful thing, and it really was fairly inexpensive. It's not a large roof, you saw. It's a small kitchen extension that we have. And I've actually got the details of the roofer. The roofer was a standard roofer who doesn't even boast about fitting green roofs, but did a really good job, really careful. And okay, I can see there's some questions coming through. How did I water it? I got into trouble watering it, let me tell you. I got into trouble with my next door neighbours the first 2 weeks, because I thought it'd be a really good idea to get the hose from the garden, stick it up, wave it around. Oh dear, the water went into my next door neighbour's back door. I didn't realise it was open. So just be mindful of the neighbours. Quite difficult to water, because you have to climb out of the bathroom window, which is not such a good look. But we did water it, and now we don't have to touch it. How much did it cost? Well, somebody's also asked, Abida has asked, what size is the roof? Oh, I'm a bit rubbish. I think it's 3 meters by 2. No, I don't know. Sorry, can't remember. It's small, and it cost us about £1,400 to have greened, which I don't think is bad, because it was done so beautifully. And as I say, I think we're going to have that flat roof for years. It's the temporal flat roofy thing under the green roof is guaranteed for 10 years, but I think with the green roof on top, I think it's going to last a lot longer.
Yeah, so you've answered some of, I think you've answered most of the questions.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what happens if you get a real cloud burst and a huge amount of rain? Is there any drainage to the soil that's there, or would it become a pond?
No, I mean, we've had those cloudbursts, haven't we? We've actually had rather a lot of them in the certainly in the last 2-3 years. It's absolutely fine. It's a proper roof with drainage on the sides. It's been done as you'd expect. I have no problems at all. I get more flowers actually. It's sedum, and the sedum does flower, so that looks a bit happier when there's proper rain.
So there's drainage out of the soil itself.
Yeah.
Somehow, yeah.
Well, it's just been done so well, and the soil is really quite deep, and the layering is as it needs to be. As I say, there are standards for how to do these things properly. You can't. It's not a job I'd recommend people doing themselves. I really wouldn't. Get someone to do it for you.
Are there other plants you can use, or does it have to be sedum?
I don't know. I'm not an expert, but sedum is good. Having had it for 6 years, I'd say yes, go for sedum. The sedum comes in rolls, as I said in that little bit of film, and they tend to put a mixture of sedum plants in those rolls. It looks better. I mean, I think mine's fairly. I don't think there are many. I don't know. Looking at that bit of video, I don't think there are that many. I don't think the variety is particularly impressive, but it is lovely and it really works. And I think actually being able to forget about something is quite good.
Someone asked, does it add a significant amount of weight to the roof? It must add quite a bit of weight, I suppose.
Yes, and that's why I had a proper roofer to do a proper job. I think you've got to be really careful about your structures, and with anything, you know, we've got solar panels as well. There's always going to be a survey before any kind of work like that goes ahead.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember. Did you have the extension in use before you had the green roof? Or was
we did. Yes, we did. So,
So were you able to detect whether it was providing extra insulation? Was it obvious to you? Or any change obvious?
It's not well. I mean, we had the rubbish roof for quite a short amount of time because it started leaking. Guess what? It does. I haven't checked this in a scientific way. It feels cozier now, and certainly, and it's definitely cooler in those. You know, we've had a couple of really blistering hot summers. It's beautiful in that kitchen extension. It really is lovely.
Yeah.
So you do feel protected actually from the elements.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I don't think we have any other questions there. I might just make a point that the sustainability group does have a thermal imaging camera. So if you're making changes and would like to be able to have some measure of the effect that they have, to take some before and after thermal imaging photos might be interesting. That would give you an indication as to how well insulation is working. Could consider that. Are there any other questions for either Susie or James?
Brian, there's one other question from Karen. about
Right.
how deep the soil is on the roof?
No, I don't. Are you able to answer that, Susie? Oh, well, that's a good answer.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's sort of sensible-ish.
Right.
You know, it happened in 2015. I can't really remember, but it was it's really satisfying to watch. It's actually, I think, have a look. If you've got a flat roof, just have a look. Ours was that deep of horribleness, and you know, it collected, you know, tennis balls that would get lobbed in, bits of rubbish, old leaves, tat. So you may be surprised. I don't think you need tremendous depth actually for a green roof to work.
Mhm.
Does your son appreciate the view?
He does. Well, he doesn't mention it very often, but I think going back to how it was before would be a brutal blow, frankly. It really is. I do recommend it. I do recommend it. And I'm absolutely happy to share. My roofer was a roofer called DG Locker Limited, and I'll put the details in the chat. I actually think they're a Which recommended roofer, and I really wish I'd been able, you know, my dad had got them before he had his roof done. That was a bit of a disaster outside the purview of this conversation. Yeah, very good, reliable.
Very useful to have a recommended roofer.
It is, yeah, yeah,
Plenty of cowboys around.
absolutely.
Okay, any other questions for either?
I just saw a question come in about the pacifers and the humidistats.
Right, yes.
Can I answer? Do you mind if I answer that?
Yes, go ahead, James.
So the humidistats is specifically for the bathrooms to draw out the steam, and a pacifier you would put in. Well, normally it'd be put in the front and the back of the property, and so depending on how many floors you have, if you have the insulation, you'd have 2 on each floor basically of your property, not in the bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And they work well, they work slightly differently, but so that's how you do it. That's the difference between them. And the humidistat is runs on AC.
So
Right. So
what
the
is
air
AC?
vent,
Electricity. Sorry.
yeah. So it's just mains electricity.
Mains electricity, yeah.
Yeah. Air vents usually are venting to underfloor spaces or sometimes between floor spaces. Is that what the passive air vent is doing, or is that straight into your living area?
We have it straight into our lounge and bedrooms.
Oh, okay.
And the family room. The front and back of each floor, basically.
Okay. So it's an alternative to having a window open.
Yes, in the winter, people don't want to have windows open when it's freezing cold, like now, for example.
Absolutely,
No,
yeah.
they don't want to be doing that. And yeah. So.
Yeah. Good. Right. Anybody else? I think we've had 2 very interesting, very different presentations. It's great that you've been able to do the work you've done and share it with us all. Thank you very much for doing that with James and Susie. And I hope everybody who's been watching will have picked up, well, certainly by the amount of questions we've had. I think clearly people have found it useful to be able to gain more from you.